Hey guys, welcome to Hedwig Herbals. So today I want to talk about mullein. Right now we're in COVID and we're in this COVID crisis, right? And I thought I wanted to take a moment and show you guys what mullein looks like in its very beginning stages, because this is really rare to see. People often show it when it's full grown and really tall. It's like a spike, and then it has a little bit of rosette at the bottom with a big spike and little yellow flowers at the top. Now this little guy is from last year. And the reason why I want to show you this is because if you have a garden or you have access to any ground at all, considering that we're in this COVID crisis and it is a respiratory illness, this is a respiratory cure. I suggest that we all go outside, go for a little walk around our gardens and see if you can find any. So before you get out the lawnmower, before you go crazy and rake all the grass, I did rake it a little bit so I can actually show you some of these, but before you rake it too vigorously, see if you can find these and if they're actually growing in your garden. Most people will consider them a weed unless you're a herbalist or you're a wild crafter, so you go out and forage for things, and you'll probably think of this as a weed in your garden. I think it's a really beautiful plant. I know right now it's teeny tiny, but when it grows, I feel like when there's a whole bunch together, they're just absolutely gorgeous. One by itself, it can look a little intrusive, but when there's a whole bunch, I think they're gorgeous. So what I actually do is I dig them up and move them together and then end up with a little mullein bed. So at this point, I can't show you that because they're all this big. As they grow, and I tell you they will grow really fast. We are still in zone 5, or we are in zone 5, and it's pretty cold. I'm sitting outside, I'm wearing 2 sweaters. It's kind of chilly right now. This I think is like the 3rd warm day we've had yet. But over the next few days, and as you go south, so into zone 6, 7, 8, and certainly across the states, you're going to be a lot warmer. Your mullein will be bigger and taller and harvestable, whereas mine is really small. So first thing, go find your mullein in your yard. Make sure that you're not going over with your lawnmower. Make sure you're not raking it or digging it up or spraying it with anything, because if you get COVID, or if you have a cold, or if you have asthma or anything related to your respiratory system, this is going to help. The information about this is readily available. So if you go online, you can even ask Google, what are the medicinal properties of mullein? And she will tell you it's all about the respiratory system. Now, I feel, and a lot of my herbal teachers are telling me, that the best way to take it is in a smudge. So I would take a whole bunch, obviously when they're big and they're ready. And as long as they're green, if they're leaves, they're going to be fuzzy and they're a little fat, which is cute. But as long as they're green and this year's growth, you can go ahead and pick them. You can dry them and you can bind them, and then you can set them on fire and smudge them, right? That's what a smudge is. It's just like incense. And then you want to just breathe in that smudge. Get that mullein smoke into your lungs. I know that sounds very counterintuitive, because why would you want to smoke anything? Why do we want to put smoke in our lungs? But go online and do your own research. Don't just take my word for it. This will help. Second thing you can do is you can take it as a tea. Now, how you do that is simple. Make a tea. You can take the fresh leaves, or you can take leaves that you have dried, or even leaves that you have purchased. I will say, if you have access to fresh leaves, if this is growing in your garden, it is significantly cheaper just to go out in your garden and pick a few leaves, bring it inside, and put it in some tea. Now, a decoction might be your best bet, as in the longer you let it sit in the tea, the stronger your tea will become. So I find that when I make when I make my mullein tea, and I'm using mulleins that I've already picked and dried from last year, I can use, a tea ball. I fill the tea ball all the way to the top. It's pretty squishy, and when it dries, in fact, that's pretty, this part's all broken up, but when it dries, it still has some good volume because of all this squishy fuzziness to it. So I take a good amount, maybe a tablespoon or so, shove it into the ball. So I find that when making a tea from mullein, it takes a long time to really get those mullein essences and the medicine and the essential oils out of the mullein if you're doing it as a general tea. And a tea means you steep it for about 5 minutes. If you do it as a decoction, then you're steeping it anything more than 5 minutes, and probably I say up to a day. I wouldn't make a decoction of this that's more than a day, because things can go bad and they can start to ferment, which is not the worst thing. There are things you can do with things that have fermented, but if you're not familiar with that, that might totally turn you off. So what you can do, however, is you can do it in the evening, fill a mason jar with mullein leaves, or put a bunch of mullein leaves in a mason jar and fill it full of water, let it sit on your counter, and then drink it the next morning as a cool aid, like a lemonade, but in this case, a mullein-aid. Those are two really great ways to drink it. The point here is to get it into your system. If you can get it into your lungs, or you can drink it every day. Now, if you have a cold, or you have a respiratory illness, or you have COVID, for example, which really is pneumonia or some variation of pneumonia is where we end up when we have COVID. Of course, it's much, much worse, I realize. But this is going to help. Certainly in your early stages, it might help. It'll help move things. It'll help decongest you. It'll help get all that stuff out of your lungs. It'll help you be able to breathe. Now, you can also use it for smudging or even for smoking. If you are a smoker, the First Nations used to roll this with their tobacco or smoke it all by itself if they have smoked too much of something else. Let's say you're a smoker and you want to stop smoking, or you're a smoker and you want to counter some of the effects of the bad smoking, because what we have right now is this terrible respiratory disease. So you could roll this into a cigarette and of course dry it first, and then you could also smoke that. Now, I have heard that you can use the leaves at any stage, but the best time to pick them is when they're young. So when they're early in the spring, or in the first year, or in the second year before the flowers and before the stalk has come. That being said, for this kind of emergency situation, if you can't get your hands on anything small, if it's a late in season and all the mullein around you is in its second year and it's all tall, go ahead and use it anyway. You might have to use more, you might have to use it for a longer period of time, but it's going to be better than nothing. So that's my big tip for mullein. Now, mullein has many other properties. It's really good for all kinds of fun things. We have a toilet paper crisis right now, and when these leaves get really big, they're soft. Now, I personally have never used it, but I've heard people tell me this a million times. Mullein is nature's toilet paper. And as far as all the other uses, I'm going to do a few more videos on mullein as it gets bigger, and I can show you what it looks like later on in the season. We'll come back to it a few times because I think it's really important to know what it looks like at the different stages. Now, most books will show you mullein in its full stage with flowers, and when you're dealing with medicinal things, you normally want to pick the plant before it's flowered. So knowing what it looks like well before it's flowered, and in this case when it's super tiny, just so you can identify it and know not to pick it. And if it has already greened up and leafed up, my girlfriend just lives 20 minutes from here, and her mullein is already about 6 inches, little rosette of it on the ground, whereas this stuff is from last year, and I don't have anything new over here at all. I'll have to go for a walk and see if I can find some for you guys, or I'll throw some pictures in of when it's a little bigger. If you have planted foxglove digitalis anywhere in your garden, now these have little cone-like flowers. They tend to be pink or white, and they have little spots on them. I'll throw a picture in. If you have planted that when it's really small in its first stage, it's not fuzzy like this, but it does have that same rosette to it. So if you have planted foxglove, do not eat it, okay? It is extremely toxic, and I've mentioned this before, and a lot of people like to say, those plants look nothing alike. Well, of course, to somebody who knows what they're doing, they don't really look alike. But to someone who's not sure and who's simply looking for that classic mullein shape, that nice round, pointed at one side, pointed at the other side, leaf that's fuzzy and fat and a light greenish color and a rosette low to the ground, digitalis could be confused as mullein. It can also be confused as comfrey. Comfrey, theoretically, if you really aren't sure, could also be confused as mullein, but comfrey is good for you. We will talk about that in a different video. So for now, I just want to say, make sure you go out in your garden, find your mullein. It should be there somewhere. Mullein loves to grow in dry places, anywhere where the ground has been disturbed. In fact, I had some chickens over in this patch behind me last year or the year before, and they scratched up the ground really well, and then the mulleins grew like crazy the next year. So anywhere that's been disturbed, if there's a building site where they've taken all the topsoil and made a giant mess, it kind of likes those damaged places. And in the horticultural world, it is one of the first plants that will come to restore health to an area. So when you're dealing with, a a place has been over-trampled or overeaten by cows, and the ground is just terrible and dry and nothing's really growing and you're getting very few grasses, mullein is one of the first plants that will show up there. It also likes to grow places that used to be wet. So if there's a river, an old river bank, or if you have nothing that's continuously wet, but something that was wet last year or wet many years ago, like a dried up riverbed, you're more likely to find it. Now I'm up on a hill, kind of in the mountains. I mean, I know Ontario doesn't technically have mountains, but these hills are pretty big and it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. You can buy the seeds and you can grow it yourself. I have seeds inside and I do grow it. And actually last year I did a video, I'll have to link it, and I had the mullein and I was harvesting the mullein seeds and putting them into a package and talking about a little bit about the medicinal uses, and probably said it all again, and talking about how to store it and such. And that was a video that was mixed in with other things. So I do collect the seeds just so that I can make sure that I'm growing it enough, that I have enough for myself. Also because I think it's beautiful and the birds love it. The flowers are really good if you have an earache. They're also really good if you have a sore or like me, terribly broken, dried out hands because I'm always working in the garden. You can take some of these flowers, mix them with an oil, maybe put a little bit of beeswax in that oil, calendula, something else like that, anything you want, and then mix it up while it's nice and warm, let it harden, obviously into a container. Don't let it harden into your original bowl, you won't get it out again. And then you can use that as a lotion or as a cream on your hands. Now, I will be talking about something like that also in an upcoming video where we'll dive more into it. But at the moment, I'm only doing one video at a time, and I'm going to try to mostly talk about things for the foreseeable future that are specifically related to our respiratory system and to flu, health, coughs, dealing with all of these issues that we're potentially dealing with right now. I will tell you also, if you are concerned about COVID, get a lot of sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. And if you're not sure or you think I'm a little kooky at this, watch some TED Talks, find out why sleep is so important for us and how sleep actually boosts your immune system, because it definitely does. So get as much sleep as you can. Drink a ton of water. Make sure that your body is hydrated. You want your immune system to have enough water and liquid in your body to be able to do what it does best. I'm Scarlett. I hope you found this helpful, and I will be seeing you in one of my many videos and one of my many channels. Toodaloo, guys. Stay safe. Have a great day.